we now welcome our next speaker, and I will this time get the slide right. Brigitte Trousse from the University Côte d'Azur, INRIA, the National Institute for Research in Digital Science Technology in France, who is joining us online to tell us about the Living Lab process that they have put in place. She is originally a mathematician, professor in fact, and a computer scientist who then is dealing with people. Thank you, Brigitte.
Thank you.
Yes, you are.
Thank you very much. Okay, so first I want to thank the organizer for the invitation. It is a real pleasure to speak about Living Labs. So just to say some words, more words concerning my profile. I am effectively a computer scientist, as you said, mainly in artificial intelligence, working on the human task and working a lot with psychologists and ergonomics in order to understand this reasoning and also to model knowledge. I belong to the Living Lab community from 2006, so it's a long time. I was co-manager of ICT Usage Lab, who was the first Living Lab labeled by ENOL. ENOL is the European network of Living Labs, created in 2006. What a moment. I need to
Oh, we can't hear you anymore.
Yes. And so I have a lot of, I am involved at the European level and also in the Francophonie community for Living Labs. So, and I am in the directory board of ENOL actually, and creative member of ENOL also in 2006. And my links to agriculture sector, so I have not a lot of links. I am granddaughter of farmers, and I have some links with some European project, Liverure. It was finished this year, and I am involved in the past, in 2016, in the first sort of a prefiguration of a Living Lab, who was a laboratoire d'innovation territorial, LIT, Grande Culture en Auvergne. And I am involved also in the scientific committee in Digital Act. First, I have organized my talk like this. I want you understand that when we say Living Lab, we have to better explain about what we are going to speak. In the Francophonie Living Lab, we stabilize the vocabulary. So Living Lab, first I am going about methodology because about process, a Living Lab process. So this refers to project. And I want also at the end to speak about Living Labs at the macro level, at the territory, which is different for me. So usually in French, I use Living Lab for the macro level, and you use in French project with the Living Lab methodology for the second one. So Living Labs, I don't going to explain everything, but there are some important keywords. So open innovation, I put the main reference from Strasbourg. There is also a notion of lead users, because we are in the Living Lab, we want to address innovation of ruptures. So we need to have some users who are dreams, and we are not constrained by the feasibility or something like this. So it's the notion of lead user from Von Hippel. The notion of Living Labs, it's recognized that it's coming from US, from William Mitchell from MIT lab. It was more about observation in a real context, what they did in the past. In Europe, which was introduced after the Lisbon strategy in 2005, the concept of Living Labs was a little more complex, perhaps, than the initial use of Living Lab in US. And you see a lot of keywords concerning Living Lab. I put Open Innovation 2.0. I will come back to this. When you speak about innovation, when we speak about Living Labs, some are addressing technological innovation, or social innovation, or societal innovation. And an important thing is also value creation. Wait a moment, I have a problem with this. And also there is a notion of a user experience. And an important thing is partnership, public, private, people. So I'm going to go back to this. When we speak about Urban Innovation 2.0, I put the flavor of this is Paul Salmelin from the European Commission, from the DG Connect. So it is a slide from him, so I encourage people who want to say more about Open Innovation 2.0 to come back to his presentation. The difference between Open Innovation and Open Innovation 2.0 is that we use the quadruple helix. I will come back on this, but quadruple helix, it's that we consider the people, the end user, the user, as a stakeholder, if you want, as a partner of a project in a living lab. So quadruple helix is very important, and also the notion of win more, and also the notion of ecosystem instead of cluster. The definition from the European Network of Living Labs, you can find on the website, is living lab as open innovation ecosystems in real-life environments based on a systematic user co-creation approach that integrates research and innovation activities in communities, placing citizens here, and this, in our context today, we have to understand that citizen could be any users. It could be farmers, it could be professional. It is the targeted user we address. So placing citizen at the center of innovation. In the community of European Community of Living Labs, there is a person, Dimitri Schurman, who makes his PhD studies, and introduced the three levels: the macro level, the mezzo level, and the micro level. The macro level is the level of the ecosystem, if you want, between the partnership, public-private people. The mezzo and micro are more linked to the project, so and the methodology. And a living lab focuses on a well-structured organization. This is at the macro level, which living labs project. So within a living lab, there are a lot of projects adopting a living lab approach. We are going to zoom on this, and consisting of co-created activities in the micro level also. So myself, I use to explain what is, or to describe a living lab, 3 dimensions. So the dimensions of the ecosystem at the macro level. So at this level, you have to explain who are the stakeholders, who are the founding members of the living labs. Ideally, it should be public-private people, and ideally, we should find this kind of partners in the government. It's not every time the case. Huh? And we have also at this level the definition of the objective, of the shared vision, charter also, something like this, and also the definition of the governance and the business model. After, you have a lot within a living lab, we have a lot of projects based on the living lab methodology. So sometimes there is an ambiguity when people speak about the living lab. We don't know if they speak about a project with a beginning and the end. It is a problem solving, or if they are speaking about the living lab as a structure, as an ecosystem, and like this. And after, in the living lab, you can imagine you can have different resources, for example, physical infrastructure, technological platforms, software, human resource, user community. You are able to address, if you have a startup who come and see the living lab and want to mobilize a certain targeted user, perhaps a living lab could do this. Some example, I put this, it's not exhaustive, but I put some initiative in agriculture, agri-food. So in Serbia, there is one in the past, label by Enol, it was a PA for all, Precision Agriculture for All, from Biosense in Serbia. In Canada, the first living lab in this sector, labeled by Enol, was Acadie Lab near Montreal, and now Canada has put in place a program to supporting the creation of ecosystem living labs, and I think there are now around the 5 initial living labs, I think, they have created. And in France, we start in 2016. There is the document, the plan, Agriculture Innovation 2025, and that make the promotion of living labs, and they are the 2 first living labs, prefiguration of living labs in 2016. It was a Laboratoire d'Innovation Territorial, Grande Culture Auvergne, and also Westerel, linked more animals, the well-being of animals. And after, there is a different call for manifestation in French from the French government, making the promotion of living labs and territory d'innovation. And today there are around 14, I think, living labs in agriculture, agri-food, and forest in France. I put over reference, so you have the article from our colleague Canadian and from Muriel Mandrini from INRIA this year. You can find it here. And there is also the European Network of Living Labs linked to the European Commission DG Agri. There is a task force, rural agri, and mainly a working group concerning agri-food. I heard the previous speaker speaking about a network of living labs. In this working group, agri-food, they try to exchange best practice between the living labs in the world. So the second point is now when we speak about living lab, I want to speak about the living lab approach, about project. So a project was based on living lab approach. So I speak about the quadric helix. So you see the triple helix was, you have a business, enterprise, and so on, academic and public sector, who are user-centered. It's a user-centered model. In living lab, you use the term user-driven. I see the previous speaker used farmer-led. I prefer farmer-led or user-led model. It corresponds to the definition of a quadric helix, and you see that the final user is, as the others, an actor in the design of the new services or new products. The role of the user, the end user, so you can imagine it is the farmers, it could be perhaps the citizen, it depends the project you address. So you can imagine that when you say user, it's all the user in the value chain. It's not only the end user. So you can imagine to have a project with citizens and farmers and so on. So, well, it's not the case in Living Lab. So we can design something without the user. We can do for them, for the user. And the Living Lab methodology is more the two last cases. We can do with user and by user. By user means that the user are member of a team, of a design team of what we are doing. And with user, they are involved in certain steps of the process. So, and there are some intermediaries also that ask the needs. And okay, I go later. So the linear methodology, it's a non-linear process, it's an iterative process. The people are in the center. We co-create value. We want to emphasize the co-creation of value by the end user or by the. We need a participative approach, and we consider the farmer or the end user or the user as experts of their daily life. So this is what is important also is it's a continuous design, and we have to anticipate how to capture the user feedback from the beginning of the project. So it's never finished, so you have to think about how to collect the user feedback when you do something. Experimentation is a real situation, so this is very classical. So it's a user-driven. It's you don't speak about user usability, but your user experience. There are some models we use to evaluate user experience based on three aspects: knowledge, social aspects, and business aspects. Construction and I think you, after my presentation, you understand the difference between living lab. When you say living lab, it's the ecosystem, it's the structure, the juridic entity that. And when you say project based on the living lab methodology, we avoid to use living lab for this. So we did in the past, in 2010, a research. You can see different criteria, for example, concerning evaluation from reliability or what we are design or adoption, or if we address a structure group, a targeted user, it's a structure group, or it is a structure for smart cities, for example. And after, we can see that the user are viewed as observed, subject. So this is more user-centered design. And what we want in Living Lab is user as value creation. And I have to go faster because I am late, finally. So there are different methodologies. This is from Sweden. You see it's an iterative process. In their case, they have 3 cycles. And for each cycle, they use 3 phases, appreciate, design, and evaluate. For myself, I use, for example, for one cycle, I use 4 steps: co-creation is idea generation, exploration, and you choose among the ideas, experimentation and evaluation. And after you have another cycle like this, and we have the feedback of the user to modify to make a second version of the services of the tool. Now, I want to address Living Lab as an open innovation ecosystem at the territorial level, because when I think about Living Labs in agriculture and agri-food or forest, for me it's referred to what we call territorial Living Labs, and there are a lot of articles concerning territorial Living Labs, also from our Canadian researcher. These Living Labs are situated in a territory. These Living Labs aim to develop a collective intelligence on this territory. So they are viewed as a learning innovation ecosystem for me. They need to put in place an observatory within the Living Lab involving science and humans, social and human sciences researchers, in order to evaluate the position change of the people, the engagement level, and something like this. So for me, if you want to scaling up, we need to define indicators to evaluate each project within a Living Lab. For example, the model of KSB. So we have to instantiate in your application, in your domain, application domain, and also at the macro level. And we need to reduce the gap, and we need also to reduce the gap between those used by public policy and those used by Living Lab. Sometimes in Living Lab we are proud about something, about some indicator, but these indicators are not used by the public policy, because it takes a long time, because people has to practice the Living Lab methodology. They have to need time, and we can also evaluate the change within a different project. And what is I said at the beginning that Living Lab was linked to knowledge economy. That means it's a very important aspect of the Living Lab. We need to capitalize best practices, knowledge, commons, data, and tools. And of course, the digital technology could be used at different levels in the Living Labs, in agriculture and other Living Labs, for supporting the Living Lab process during a project, for observing, collecting data, for data analysis, for new ways for collaborating and co-creating new innovations. So a lot of things used to deploy Living Lab methodology. It could be also used for modeling exchange knowledge, and also for co-creating new relevant products, and for decision-making, supervision, optimization, support of change of practice, and so on. But for me...
Sorry, Brigitte, we're going to have to ask you to conclude soon, please.
Are often related to challenge linked to climate change and sustainable development. So for me, digital tools or digital innovation are useful, but not enough. We need to develop Living Lab at the territorial level, and to address also social innovation and also societal innovation, in order to facilitate the reappropriation of the territory by its inhabitants, farmers, citizens, and so on, to adopt participatory democracy, to develop collective intelligence and trust between all stakeholders, to capitalize knowledge, to empower each individual, farmer, citizen, to act, skills and knowledge, and to adopt a systemic vision of a territory from the production to the consumption, and to adopt finally an interdisciplinary approach, and to recognize the know-how of farmers and their expertise of daily life. Sorry for the fault and in English for the slide. Thank you very much.